Hey everybody, I'm Yvonne Williams with Back to Earth Creations, and in this video I want to talk to y'all about hammering metal, so let's get started. So here you can see I have an array of hammers. This is a Rawhide Mallet. This is a Poly Mallet. It's like a plasticky rubber. It's a hard rubber as opposed to an actual rubber mallet, which is like a boignier, springier. I don't really know the technical terms for any of this stuff. I use these predominantly in leatherworking, but they can be used for wire wrapping and metal hammering as well. Now this one is a really nice hammer. It's much heavier than the one that I've been using over the years. There will be links to all the different tools and materials that I'm using in the video description below. And this one is great because it has interchangeable heads. So you can do all sorts of different texturing and stuff, and it has some stiff-edged, sharp-edged, as well as rounded-edged heads. And you're going to get different effects with those because if it's a rounded edge, you're less likely to get a sharp cut into your metal. But we'll talk more about that in a bit. And then this one is it was my very first metal hammer. It's been so good, and you can see I've used it on all sorts of stainless steel, and I really marked up the head, whereas a fresh brass head does not have nearly as much marking. Now the markings on this actually transfer over into the metal whenever I'm working with it, so that's something to keep in mind. But you can see here on this one, you can hear that this plastic, the nylon head here, seems to have shrunk over the years, so it wobbles quite a bit. And to fix that, what I'm going to do is just unscrew the head, and I have a hot glue gun, and I'm just going to do a glob of hot glue. I don't want to do too much, but I also don't want to do too little, so let's just gamble a bit. And I've put that on there, and now making sure that the head is in place how I'd like for it to be, I'm going to just screw this on and let that hot glue permeate and fill where it needs to be. And so now no movement, and I'm going to let that cool before we use it. And then I also, right now I'm set up on a granite block. Whatever stone you use, I recommend it being over an inch thick. That way when you hit it, you're not going to have to worry about cracking your stone at all. And then here I also have some different anvils. This one's really nice for getting different shapes, whereas this one I like because it doesn't spring around as much. It's a little bit heavier and a wider base, and also this swivels, which can be very useful, but I don't know, sometimes it bothers me that it's wiggling around on me. Sometimes I just want something nice and stable. Here I have some scrap wire that I've been saving up from other projects. This is 5mm wide, 4 or 5mm wide aluminum wire. And then this is 16 gauge dead soft anodized aluminum wire. And then here we have, this is Parawire. I love them. They do such good work with their wire that they make. And I wanted to demonstrate with you guys how well it holds up to hammering. And of course I didn't bring any metal snips over with me. So, ooh, I found some. So I'm just going to snip off a section of that. And this is 16 gauge. And I don't know, I'll try to put down in the video description whether these are standard wire gauge or American wire gauge. It depends sometimes just on the day of the week or who you're buying the wire from. So let's begin with just demonstrating on, here is some, oh, and the dog's drinking out of his water. Here is some of that 16 gauge dead soft aluminum, and I'm going to come through with the steel head and you can see it dishes out really nicely, hammering the end. I'm going to give ourselves a snip, and now I'm going to do the brass head. I haven't really noticed too much of a difference, at least on the aluminum, between the steel and the brass heads. So we're going to experiment further and see if we get any kind of different effects with different metals. And so now we're going to come through and use our old brass head so you can see the texture difference. And it didn't give too much of a difference. Now you'll always see there's the very smooth side from where it was against the stone, and then there's the slightly textured side from when the hammer was hitting it. So you can see it does give a little bit of a difference. Then here on the back side though, very similar. Now as the metal spreads, whenever you're hitting it on the anodizing, you can see the silver shines through just a little bit more than what it originally looked like, which I personally really like that effect, but it's something to definitely keep in mind. Excuse me. Sorry, I'm still getting over being sick. And now we can start experimenting with the nylon heads. You're not going to get as much spreading with a nylon head as what you would with one of the metal heads. It's more intended for work hardening, because you can see right now this bends pretty easily. But then once we've you see I hammered it quite a bit, it's much harder to bend. Like it stiffens it, it helps it to hold its shape better. And so, I mean, you can see this one's so old, it's so cut up. So it's leaving quite a bit of patterning on the metal, if the camera will look at it. And so now let's swap out on our other head for a nylon jaw. Not nylon jaw. Sorry, there are pliers that have nylon jaws though. That's why I'm saying that. It's because I can't English good. A nylon head. And come through with a heavier hammer. And I actually prefer the nylon head for if you're just spooning or like paddling out the tip of something, because you can see it gave a much more gradual, whereas with the steel head you can like really mess up your work. I don't know, that's really nice though. I like it. It's good stuff. And so now let's go through on some of this flat, and that's where I want to show you guys how the textures come in really handy. Like super fun to play with. So this one's neat with its little like toothed look. It's so cool. Like the little beveled geometric pattern. And it's really nice because, I mean, some of these I'll probably not use very much, but I don't have to worry about investing in a hammer that its set head is that texture. There we go. Nice and in position. I'm going to angle this like that. Now with this one, you can see you really want to get one solid hit in, because otherwise it's not very lined up very well. And so you can see you can just kind of texture it out. Let me see if I can hammer just a little harder. Whoa! That one kind of bit through in places, so you don't want to hit too hard. But this would probably be best used on like a sheet metal or something where you have a little bit more surface area to work with. But if you take this same metal, same hammer rather, and use it on some ground wire, it just kind of chews it up. So experiment, you know, that's why we save our scrap wire around here, is so that I can go through and try every little thing that comes to mind to be like, oh, well, that didn't work. And now also I wanted to demonstrate, while we're still working with the aluminum, the Poly Mallet. Now this one being flat and more or less domed in the center from whenever I, leather work with it, is just hitting kind of and bouncing all over the place. So let's try maybe with the side. No, that's not really doing much either. So I don't know, I wouldn't recommend this for, it doesn't offer a whole lot of control. Now possibly for sitting the hammer on something and getting a secondary hit, I don't know what purpose that might serve, but if you're doing like texturing and something and you want a little bit more accurate of a hit, let's see if maybe over here on this, we can just position it and then, yeah, it gives us a little bit more, like we're treating the tool, the hammerhead as a stamp, and then imprinting our metal. And then let's try our Rawhide Mallet. And again, if I could get different shapes of the heads or maybe a fresh hammer, we might be getting different results. Now the Rawhide seems to be doing a fantastic job of work hardening with very minimal flattening. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. So I would definitely recommend the Rawhide over the Poly Mallet if you're investing in one or the other for wire purposes. But most of all, I would recommend one of these two hammers. Honestly, this one does all the same stuff that this one does. You just have to be careful to tap a little lighter. And this one does just about all the things that this one does. You just have to hit a little harder because it's a lighter hammer. So I like having both because I'm spoiled. And I'm doing a lot of hammering here lately. But it is really nice that these have interchangeable heads. And it is nice to have a heavier metal hammer on hand. Now, with that being said, where did that parawire go? Let's check this out. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to start dishing. I think that's what it's called at least. So you can see I have hammered the bejesus out of this, and it has started to spread just here on the tip to where the original copper shows through. But I hammered that flat. Ooh, and it makes such a pretty gradient on the back side though. I don't know if you can see. Oh, gosh, that's gorgeous. I couldn't have planned that. Man alive. And then if I scrape, it's not even really flaking off. Like they're off the edge where some of it peeled, but it's still holding up pretty well. So let's go through. Did I use the nylon head or the brass head for that? I don't remember. So let's try the nylon head. Am I still in frame? Nope. So this is a copper core wire that has been enameled. And so you can see with the nylon head, it work hardened it really nicely and no effect. I mean, there's a little bit of texturing, but that's because this is an old and seriously marred up hammerhead. Little bit of texturing, but other than that, that enamel is still intact. So let's see then with our steel head on the hammer. And I'm going to trim that piece off so we can so again with that steel, a little bit of flaking, but on the hammer side, gosh, that's so pretty though. So I would recommend a brass head for the enameled copper, I think. And again, you're just not going to get the same effects with the copper as what you would with the aluminum, because aluminum is naturally just a much softer metal. So you can see some nice spreading. As long as you don't hammer the bejesus out of it, it stays intact. And then I've got a little bit of, if I had used a smoother surface, because it'll take up the texture of whatever you're hitting. I do love that gradient though. Oh, that's so pretty. And so in things like that, I don't even consider this a negative attribute. It's just something to kind of keep in mind and to know the behaviors of the material that you're working with. That way you can kind of plan for it. Because really, if you don't want any flaking or any color change or anything like that, just I would recommend working with a solid material, like a solid brass or a solid copper, or something. That way you don't have to worry about it at all. This did more work on the nylon head than what it did on the metal. But that's nice and stiff though. So I hope that this gives you guys a much better idea of what different hammer heads and hammer types can do for you. Hey everybody, thanks so much for hanging out with me for this tutorial. I hope that it was helpful to you. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas, please leave them down below. And like I had mentioned, all the different tools and materials used in this video will be listed in the video description. And if you follow any of those links, those are Amazon affiliate links, so anything that you buy through there really helps out our company. So I really appreciate all of the support and everything that you guys give just through watching and commenting and liking and sharing and subscribing. Sorry, shameless self-promotion. But I really though, thank you guys. You help me to keep making videos just about every day. So if you would like to support the creation of our work beyond doing all of those things, please check us out on Patreon. We do all sorts of different behind the scenes content and exclusive access both to patrons and people who just have a Patreon account. You don't even have to be a pledger. Then I also do weekly giveaways, digital download content, and monthly craft crates where you can get possibly some hammered metal to use in your own work. If you don't quite have the setup ready yet to be hammering your own, or you just feel more confident using somebody else's components, because that's what I'm going to be going through and making some little pieces to include in this month's craft crate, so that's pretty fun. We send out different stuff every month. But on that note, I will see y'all in my next video. There should be maybe something popping up on one of the sides of the screens. I never remember which because I'm not good at editing. Where you can subscribe and maybe see another video. So happy crafting, guys. I'll see y'all around. Bye.